Hello, this is Mark, and I'm here with Brian, and we are having a very good cup of chamomile tea. It's my favorite tea. This is Mark.
Nice.
I'm here with Bryan Sykes. Brian, you want to say hello, everybody?
Hello, everyone. I've had a nice cup of white tea, actually. So
Oh,
white tea is supposed to have lots of antioxidants in there. So I had a nice cup of white tea.
well, white tea, is good for antioxidants, and I do agree with that as well. It's good to stay healthy, and you definitely are a healthy person. And
Yes, I,
just a
I
little
try
while
to be.
ago, just a little while ago, we were talking about, fire and air. And there's a good thing to say about that. So you want to share some more about fire and air?
Yeah, when I think of those two elements, and a lot of times the elements are metaphorically and symbolically represented by the body. So when I think about fire, I think about emotion and passion and taking that passion and literally converting that passion into action. So you think about a fire. Fire can be very hot. It's typically hot, but it can be even hotter. And it's the same thing when you're talking about emotions and passions. I'm in the entrepreneurial and investing space, and one of the things they say that drives the market is people emotions. So I think about this fire quite often. And then when it comes to air, everyone breathes the same air. So I call that the heart center. It's all about sharing space, if you will. That's what I think about when I hear the elements of fire and air.
That is a very good explanation about that. And one thing I want to ask you about also is what about psychic stimuli and how is that relevant?
Psychic stimuli. That's a good question. Psychic stimuli. I think in today's time, there's an overabundance of stimuli, um, just because of the overabundance of information coming at us too fast and too often and too much. It's almost like I told someone earlier today when I was speaking with them, the way we process information today is the equivalent of trying to drink water from Niagara Falls. It's this overabundance, and so this idea of psychic stimuli to me it's important because you have to be able to regulate the fleeting thoughts that come through your mind, as we know is the script. And when you leave thoughts unbridled, it can cause quite a bit of havoc on you. So this idea of psychic stimuli is an important missing curriculum that we don't have too much of today. In fact, much of my work is really about getting people to pay attention to what's stimulating them and understanding that they're always being stimulated in one way or another, but the real key is what value is it driving for yourself or generating.
What about inner vision?
Wow, that's my space there, man. That is my space. Inner vision. Where will we be without it? The idea of vision in and of itself, and as you know, from a neuroscience perspective, we take for granted our sight, and the human brain cannot tell the difference between a image that you create in your head and one that you're looking at. So the very power of vision, sight is one of the few sense organs that has direct connectivity to the brain stem. So in other words, it processes the aspects of what it is that you're seeing, whether in your inner vision or what you're actually looking at. It processes it really, really quickly. And so inner vision is key because I heard a quote before and I'll never forget it, that Stephen Covey says everything is created twice. you first have a mental blueprint, which is a byproduct of your inner vision, and then you create the actual event, or you create the actual situation externally. And so when I think of the power of inner vision, I tend to favor that because I'm very creative by nature.
What about the aha moment?
There's too many of them that I don't capture enough. But those, that's a very good question, because here's the thing. I had a conversation with one of my mentors, and you know what he told me? Because I process information so fast, and people who are creative by nature tend to do that, and sometimes we miss moments. And he says, you're so busy, this is what he tells me, you're so busy looking for these big things. He says you should ideally be experiencing small miracles, small aha moments every day. And sometimes because you're processing things so fast and you move on to the next thing, you're missing moments. And he's spot on with that. I tend to miss a lot of aha moments because I'm ready to move on to the next thing. I don't give it time to really simmer itself. It goes back to that psychic stimuli question you asked prior. Sometimes just don't let things process, and I'm done with it. I'm on to page 20. Everyone else is still on page 5, and I'm gone. So, but the aha moments are key for learning, and then taking that learning to the next level and scaling it. And when you can do that, I think in the most effective way, it becomes a regenerative process that really you'll be addicted to that, because the aha moments that I have experienced, it's like, wow, I really want more of that. And then you're trying to capture it, and it's not something that you can just cast out a net and catch. It's something that you just have to pay attention to, literally each moment as they occur. And instead of trying to get to the next thing, be in the space of the present. And sometimes that's quite difficult for me because I'm more towards the future pull of things. So I literally have to schedule time to be in the space in the moment, or else I miss it. I understand that about myself.
Have you ever experienced a sense of fatalism?
Fatalism?
Yes.
I can't say that I have actually. I remember I was in Washington, D.C., and I was doing, it was right before I quit the medical school program, and I was doing an internship with the Public Health Commission there. And a friend of mine, we were in a car, and we were driving near the Jefferson Memorial, and all of a sudden this car came out of nowhere and hit two other cars. So apparently this was a drunk driver. So he hit these cars coming towards us, and it knocked him right on our path, and he's coming at us fast. And we just, it stopped the car, and all of a sudden, this car is coming towards us, and we didn't want to move because we don't know which way he's going to go, and either way we're just going to get hit. So we're both bracing ourselves to get hit in this head-on crash, and all of a sudden at the last minute the lights just flashed right before us, and the car veered off and just sped off. But I'll never forget that because we're like, oh my goodness, what just happened here? Who he just hit like two or three cars like he was in a ping pong table or something, and all of a sudden he's coming towards us, and we're talking fast, and the car just sped off. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen, because I thought that was, I'm bracing myself for this impact. It was kind of scary.
That was a crazy
Yeah.
incident.
We couldn't explain it. No one could explain how all of a sudden this car just missed us when it was coming so fast, and there was nowhere for him to go. I don't know if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., but that area there by Jefferson Memorial literally is two lanes, and you either drive off into the water there, or you're crashing onto a sidewalk or into another car. So it's that kind of space. So when this guy was coming towards us, it was kind of scary, and it happened really, really fast. So we have no explanation as to how we were missed, because there was really nowhere for either of us to go but to have a head-on car accident. So I said, whoever my angel is, they did a good job that day.
Brian, what about creating one's reality? Do you believe that we have that ability?
Not only do we have the ability, we have the responsibility to do so. That's one of the major things that we talk about with career mojo, and that's tough for people because we haven't been trained in that. We have well-intentional friends, parents, schools, institutions like churches and those kinds of things that have all taught us this is the way we should go. These are things that we should do. So when it comes to creating our own reality, I think once again that's one of those missing curriculums that isn't taught. We're taught how to regurgitate someone else's reality. We're not taught to be our own arbiter of our reality and what it is that we want out of our life. And so, even as we get older, some of those preferences, biases, and things that we were trained in is the ethos. It is the underlying agenda that's driving. And so this idea of creating one's reality is probably the most important thing that anyone can take on and should take on in their life as an obligation, because that's what you're offering the larger citizenry. You're offering this idea of your best self, not the false self of who you think who people want you to be, but your best self.
Let's go on to emotions. How can emotions affect one's outlook on life?
How can it affect their outlook?
Yes.
It has everything to do with it. One of the that was my research in school. The limbic system in the brain is primarily responsible for emotions. And if you think about it, the word emoto means movement. So once again, it's just like thoughts. When you have unbridled thoughts, unbridled emotions, and you don't know what to do with them, they will work against you. And that's been proven. We had laboratory experiences where we put people in situations and we're telling them that they're going to like fail a test, and the test literally is a high school test, but we tell them simply there's no way that they'll pass it, and they get really frustrated at the beginning. And we tell another group, there's no way that you can fail this test because we're quite certain that you've already taken this test before. And so just by shaping the context in people's mind, we can shape, if you will, and prime different kind of emotional states, and we can, add timing to it, we can add different things to it. But the emotions are probably one of the most powerful things that we need to be able to control, because the emotion feeds into the thought processes, and they tend to provide necessary feedback, information, and even triggers as to how you're perceiving the environment around you. So when social scientists are studying emotions, that's what they're studying. They're not studying what we label as feelings. What they're studying is what is the trigger. What's going on either in the head or in the environment that's triggering this emotion, literally. And oftentimes that's a very difficult thing to control for some people because you can't see. I had to get my own emotions under control, and that's what the martial arts have always been good for me. So I can always tell when there's a lot of stress. In fact, research will show that when you're under a high stress state, that your emotions are high, it always attacks in the weakest area of your body. That's where you experience it first. So that could serve as a trigger for you. So for me, because I was always a footballer, or soccer as it's called, in martial arts, my legs are strong, but my upper body was weak. So when I'm under a lot of duress, I'll feel it in my upper body, like in my shoulders and in my traps. It'll feel like a knot. And that's the trigger to really get control over the breathing. That's the trigger to really calm things down or take a break or do something, because the emotions are serving as information, sensory information. So that can derail people when you don't understand that. And certainly it can take you on a path that you certainly don't want to be on. And I see that happening a lot of times. People are happy 1 second and they go from bliss to piss in like Mach 2 seconds. So
Huh.
it can happen very, very fast, very fast. And it took me years to get a handle on that, because I did not get along well with my biological father, and I have a big family. So oftentimes my emotions was just all out of whack. I will fight people in a second. I'll cuss you out in a hot minute. And there's still some of that in me, but it's more tempered now, because as I said, I understand the triggers, and so once again it becomes this responsibility. I get control over the breathing immediately, get settled down, because I could really go there. People don't see that in me, but I could really go there, and it doesn't take much to do it. It really doesn't. And so it becomes a responsibility, of what would you choose? Is that what you want to reflect? And that's not what I want to reflect. And so I often choose to take control over the situation as much as possible, as much as possible.
Brian, you're brilliant. You're definitely a brilliant guy, and you know your stuff. One thing I want to ask you about as well is, what about the power of words? The words that we say, like,
Mm.
what power are those words?
That's I love words, and just like the emotions, they shape, they frame your what you're seeing. They shape the expectation. And this is what I say about words. Words are the primary currency that brings your thoughts to life. So, you and what all that you're thinking, your words will back it up. Your words will support any frame of mind that you're in. So one of the things that your words are very powerful, because they are life, and they take on its own life. And so if you're not tempering that, you can really take on this life that once again is inconsistent with the agenda of really what you're trying to bring forward. So you really have to be able to temper those words. I have a lot of respect for people who really can use words to build people up, as opposed to using words to bring people down, because words can repel. Words can really excel a situation. Think about it. Words can start an entire war. That's how powerful words are. Words can start war. So words can say, hey, I want you to join my my fascist group. I want you to go out and kill someone. I want you to do all these kinds of things. I've seen words from when I was a foster parent, where these kids were told that they're never going to be anything, they're stupid, and those things impacted them for many, many years. So, words are quite powerful in their essence, but also because of their nature. And that's what sometimes, once again, we're dealing with forces that we can't see. And so A lot of times people struggle with those things that we can't see. I much rather, and it sounds odd, I much rather to suffer from a physical wound than to suffer from wounds that are like emotionally based, or someone, abusing you with words, because you can't really see those. And we deal with this all the time where, we see people and secretly, why they say, hey, how are you doing? They say, yeah, I'm fine. But inside they're broken, literally. I did a group with entrepreneurs and investors. Now, these are high net worth people. And I told them, I'm not fooled by this persona that all of you put on, how big you are right now, because I said, I know what it's like to be broken. So I said, I'm going to pass out an index card, and I want you guys to write down, um, anonymously, something that you're going through, but people wouldn't otherwise see it based on your personhood right now. And when I read those cards, I mean, we've seen things like, um, I hate the person I become. I have no relationship with my son. I mean, the stuff on those cards was just, it wasn't what I was looking at, because everyone was playing as if they're fine. We're here at this conference. We're here to build our business and do all these things. But once again, the stuff that's going on internally, and see, that can rob you of your internal vision. It could hijack your logical reasoning capacity. So once again, all of this stuff that's internal that we have no curriculum for is probably the most important part.
That's some very interesting stuff. And one thing I want to ask you about as well is, what about, like, do you think that, we have the ability to have or experience like telepathy? Like, you know, some might say they're fine, but they're not, and we sense they're not fine, right?
Yeah, I've always had that kind of thing. I didn't know what to call it. Um, and that might be why, one of the reasons why I thought I would be a physician, although I come from a family of physicians. But I've always had that capacity where I can pick up on someone saying, hey, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, no, you're not. Something's going on. So what is it really? Some call it, psychic abilities and all these different kinds of things. I don't know what to call it. I just know that I have a high regard for emotions, centering, and those kinds of things, and I can tell when something is off in another person, and it's very easy to pick that up. It's not so easy to pick it up for myself because I can hide it well, or certainly dismiss it and just kind of move on, but it's very easy for me to pick it up in others. And so that's why I have to actually make sure that I keep my own self in check, because it would be easy for me to dismiss it of myself, but then I can see it in other people so readily and easily. So I think we do have those abilities, and in fact, I think we're born with them. A child knows this. A child can pick up, when a child can't speak, a child can pick up on the very sensory kinds of things that are going on around them. There's nothing that a parent has to say. A child can pick that stuff up. I think, once again, because life is moving so fast and we crowd ourselves with information and all this sensory stuff, it crowds out some of these capacities that we have. But I think we all have it. I really do. Touching is important to an infant when they can't talk, but they need the touching, and we're built to be social beings. We're actually wired for that. So I think we're all have it, and we use it differently in unique ways. But once again, I think our lives tend to crowd out some of these capacities that we have that are natural.
Do you think that, if we had these psychic abilities, right? Do you think that people are afraid of using them, or afraid people will think if they say they have psychic abilities?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, actually. I can't say that. I know, like say for myself, I never call it psychic abilities. I didn't know what to call it. I just know that I just pick up on how people are feeling. But I'm a world citizen, literally. So I have a high regard for humanity in general. I've always been around lots of different cultures um, and appreciate that. So I'm one that when I'm around crowds and people, I can just kind of pick up on the senses that are around me. But I don't know if people are necessarily afraid of it. I think, you know, for the most part today that we live crowded lives, and by crowded I mean information overload. We're trying to do more with less attention to provide it. We're doing all these kinds of things that keeps us from these natural senses, and we're artificially trying to create these experiences through different things. This is kind of the bad side of, if you will, of technology and that kind of thing. We're trying to create these experiences that are artificial, that takes away from our natural capacities. But I don't know if people are necessarily afraid of it, or it's just these overcrowded lives that we have. Because I got to tell you, the one of the main uh, villains of our time today is attention. We're just not giving attention to different things that we really need, that will add value to our lives, that will add value to the lives of people around us. People are inundated and overwhelmed, and they think they have to do that. That's the key. Is not, people are not understanding there's choices and there's consequences for overloading yourself and overwhelming yourself.
Good stuff. Really good stuff. I really like this. Brian, what about affirmations? Are affirmations beneficial for people?
I think they could be. I don't have affirmations. I just have more of intentions. I've used affirmations in the past, um, but it didn't work for me. So I don't know. I can't say that they're not beneficial for people. I think whatever can point you in the direction and keep you sustained as far as momentum, I think would be useful. I tend to just set an intention that tells my own psyche, it tells my own senses that this is the direction that I want to go in. But I open myself up to the possibilities. So in other words, I set an intention that opens up my heart, my mind, my will, but I'm open to the learning on the process. Because if I get stuck with the affirmation and just the affirmation, which I used to do, then I'm in the routine of saying this affirmation, but I'm not really engaged in the process of learning what it needs and what I need to do to occupy that space in between where I am and where I want to go. So, affirmations, I believe are useful. It's just not my way per se.
Okay, nice answer. I have another question here. What can one do to empower their outlook on life?
Wow, there is no one thing. I would say if there's anything immediately that one can do to empower their life is to start with why. Why is it necessary? Why do you want to? What benefit will it have for you to actually empower your life? When you can answer why, there's a distinct pattern in human development, and it's the same distinct pattern in business development, and that's understanding what to do, how to do it, and why you want to do it. Why is probably the most important, because why establishes that intention, the overarching intention. And so if you can answer the why, you position what and how. So I think if people can ask and answer the why, in fact, it's not even so much that you have to have an answer, but it sets the intention to move forward. And so I think that's something that people can do to really empower themselves, because then you're inviting yourself into this space of actually doing it. And the invitation in and of itself is all you need to begin that process.
I'm having a great time with this cup of tea over here. Let me read this to you, all right? Um, and share about it if you desire. I read a couple of times. My intuitive awareness is always increasing. My emotions are calm and serene, and I express my inner visions with truth and clarity. So my intuitive awareness is always increasing. My emotions are calm and serene, and I express my inner visions with truth and clarity.
Nice. Who is that for? Is that for me? Is that like
Yeah,
an affirmation?
yeah.
Maybe I do need affirmations. Oh, I like that. I like the idea of intuitive awareness. I like the idea of expressing with clarity, because that's what I use in my writing. It's you would be amazed. It's difficult for me to communicate in this way. I communicate visually. There's a mind map behind me, and I draw different things. That's kind of my mode of communication. So that part of our processing in the brain speaks in pictures. It doesn't speak in words. So when it comes for me to put things in writing or documenting something, it is a big process for me, like a really, really labor intensive kind of task. So I don't communicate that well with it, but once it's done, there is some clarity there. So I'm learning how to um, integrate all of those that you just mentioned. Because I do like that fact that the intuitive awareness is always increasing, because that's the space that I live in. That's part of the whole visual aspect and trusting instincts and gut. Don't have a problem with that. But the vision and clarity, I think, is aligning itself up with this process. So I like that idea.
I am very glad you do because it definitely does resonate. And, I just wanted to say that, it's been great having you on. I really enjoy your company. Super duper guy, Brian over here. Brian, what type of advice can you offer, people out there that are listening about, just finding a way in life, finding that connection with, pursuing their life, their vision. What type of advice can you give somebody that you know or you don't know, just something that someone can get started with?
Yeah, I think it starts with your identity. We say Career Mojo, that we founded, sits at the intersection of identity, doing something meaningful, and engagement. And when you can align those three, but the first part is your identity. And here's why identity is important. It's almost like when you look in the mirror and that person whom you're seeing, that's not all that there is to you. There's a whole lot more to you. And so the more you come connected with that identity, that becomes what you're working out of. So the whole idea is to work out of your reserves. But for most people, they haven't learned how to shape their identity. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Everyone else has shaped it for you, saying this is who you are, this is who our family is. And so your identity becomes part of these collective kinds of cultures, if you will. And your identity has to first start with who you are, then you can become part of these groups. Because otherwise, you don't know how to be your own arbiter of your own choices and decisions. And it becomes very scripted life, if you will. So I always tell people, start architecting this identity that you really want to reflect. Even write that down perhaps of what is it or who is it that you want to become? Why is that important for you? How does that contribute? What value does it create for yourself? What value does it create for other people? All of those have to do with your identity because it's out of that expanse that you're actually living and creating from. So, something bigger in you and coming through you that helps you to develop this life that you really want.
Awesome. Awesome. I I just want to say, Bryan, thank you very much for being on. And how could someone like reach out to you, like share more about what you do and how someone can get in contact with you.
Wow, there's so many projects that I'm a part of, a part of today, but I think the big one that's really near and dear to my heart is the Career Mojo because we're really looking to create some social technologies that not just change the shape of how we work, but it engages people in this idea of crafting their own reality, creating work you love, and living a life on purpose. So if people want to check out careermojoforlife.com, they'll find me there. Or you can just simply go to my LinkedIn page or the Google Plus. But you can sign up for updates, and we'll keep you abreast of all that we're doing with the book and all the technologies and different things that we're trying to develop. So it's going to be some pretty powerful stuff this year. So quite excited about it.
Bravo, Bryan. I really do appreciate you being on. And this was your second appearance, and it's been a blast. So, we're going to close out, and you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yes, thank you for having me on. Hopefully it won't be my last. Hopefully it won't be my last time. So, but thank you for having me. It's great, and I'm looking forward to your show. Blasting off into the stratosphere. So you're having some big time guests on there. I think it would be awesome.
Very excited indeed. So, we're going to close out. This was Tea with Bryan, and thanks for watching.